She knelt on the cold marble floor of Mensa Global Holdings, her hands shaking as security guards dragged her backward. Phones were raised. Whispers spread like fire. Esi Appiah clutched a crumpled hospital file, the last proof that the woman who once saved her life was now dying. Ink bled through the page. A red corporate stamp. Mensa Global Holdings. At the center of the chaos, Kwame Mensah signed a document without looking at her. Calm, untouchable. Esi's face collapsed as she read one line. Then he spoke quietly, decisively, freezing the entire lobby. "Take her to my house tonight. No explanation, no mercy." Esi looked up in terror, because she knew this truth too well. When powerful men help someone, always pays the price. Where are you watching from right now, and what time is it there? If you're drawn to emotional African stories about justice, dignity, and healing, subscribe and stay with us. Morning came without mercy. Esi Appiah woke before dawn on the thin mat she shared with Mame Akosua, listening to the old woman's breathing struggle against the weight of the night. Each breath sounded like it might be her last, shallow, uneven, followed by a long pause that made Esi's heart stop every time. "Mame," she whispered. A faint hum answered her. Still alive. That was all that mattered. The room they rented sat behind a row of abandoned kiosks on the edge of Accra, where the city forgot people who could not pay to be remembered. The walls were cracked, the ceiling stained with old rainwater, and the single window had no glass, only rusted bars and a piece of cloth to keep the dust out. But it was shelter. And shelter, Esi had learned, was never guaranteed. She rose, quietly folded her mat, and reached for the small plastic bag hanging from a nail in the wall. Inside were coins, some copper, some silver, counted and recounted so many times she could feel their shapes without looking. This was everything she had earned over 2 weeks of washing clothes, carrying loads at the market, and cleaning stalls after closing hours. It still wouldn't be enough. Mame Akosua had collapsed 3 days earlier, while sweeping the front of a church. A neighbor had helped Esi carry her to the public hospital. Since then, time had turned cruel. Every hour cost money. Every breath came with a bill. "Today," Esi said softly, more to herself than to Mame. "Today I will speak to them again." Mame Akosua's eyes fluttered open, old, clouded, kind. "Esi." Her voice cracked like dry leaves. "Don't fight them too hard." Esi forced a smile. "I'm not fighting. I'm asking." They both knew that asking in places like the hospital was a form of humiliation. The public hospital was already overflowing when Esi arrived. Mothers with crying babies crowded the benches. Men lay on the floor with IV drips hanging from nails hammered into the walls. The smell of antiseptic mixed with sweat and fear. Esi joined the line at the billing desk Mame Akosua supported against her shoulder. Her arms burned, but she did not shift her weight. Dropping Mame even by accident felt unthinkable. After nearly an hour, they reached the counter. The clerk barely looked up. "Card." Esi slid the worn hospital card forward along with the plastic bag of coins. They spilled onto the counter with a thin metallic sound that drew glances from the people nearby. The clerk sighed, loudly. "This is not enough," she said, pushing the coins back with one finger. "I know," Esi replied, keeping her voice steady, "but please, she needs the medication today. I can bring the rest tomorrow, I swear." The clerk finally looked at her then. Her eyes traveled from Esi's worn sandals to her faded dress, then to Mame Akosua's frail body. "Tomorrow," she repeated, unimpressed. "Do you know how many people say that Esi swallowed? I will work tonight. I will not disappear." The clerk clicked her tongue and pulled Mame Akosua's file closer. As she flipped through the papers, her brow furrowed. "Wait." Esi's breath caught. The clerk turned the file around, tapping a page with a manicured nail. At the bottom was a bold red stamp, clean, unmistakable. Mensa Global Holdings. Esi stared at it, confused. Her mind refused to process what her eyes were seeing. That is not mine," she said quickly. I've never. The clerk's expression hardened. This file has a corporate stamp. Do you think we are blind? I don't understand, Esi whispered. I have never worked for any company. I don't know anyone. Then why is this here? The clerk snapped. Heads turned. The line behind them grew restless. Esi shook her head, panic rising in her chest. Please, there must be a mistake. The clerk leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. If a company is involved, we cannot treat this as a charity case. Either they pay or you pay in full. But I don't know them, Esi said, her voice trembling now. I swear, look at me. Do I look like someone who… Enough! The clerk raised her hand. Next, security stepped closer. Not because Esi was loud, but because she was poor. Esi gathered the coins with shaking hands, her ears burning as whispers spread. Always lying, someone muttered. They think stamps grow on trees, another said. She turned away, pulling Mame Akosua gently with her. Her vision blurred, but she refused to cry. Not here. Never here. They found a bench near the emergency ward. Mame Akosua slumped against her, exhausted. Esi, she murmured. It's not your fault. Esi closed her eyes. The red stamp burned in her mind. Mensa Global Holdings. She had heard the name, of course. Everyone had. The company was everywhere. Billboards, news headlines, scholarships announced on television. A symbol of success that belonged to a world far above hers. What could they possibly want with her? Later that afternoon, as Esi waited outside the pharmacy, she noticed a young man arguing with a nurse. His voice was sharp with desperation. She has no one, he said. You can't just leave her there. Esi followed his gaze. An elderly woman lay alone on a stretcher near the wall. Her IV empty, her eyes closed. Before she could think, Esi walked over. Excuse me, she said softly to the nurse. She hasn't eaten. The nurse glanced at Esi, already annoyed. We are busy. Esi nodded. She reached into her bag and pulled out the bread she had saved for herself. She tore it in half and placed it gently in the old woman's hand, helping her sit up. The woman's eyes opened, confused, then grateful. Thank you, she whispered. Esi smiled, small and tired. Eat slowly. From across the corridor, a man stood watching. Kwame Mensah had come to the hospital for a routine board visit. An image appearance his assistants insisted was necessary. He had expected to feel bored. Instead, he felt unsettled. He watched the young woman kneeling beside the stretcher, giving away the only food she had. No cameras, no audience. Something about it irritated him. People were never kind for free. There was always a reason. He turned away, already dismissing the thought. Esi did not see him. She returned to Mame Akosua's side, unaware that her quiet act of compassion had been noticed by the very man whose name now haunted her hospital file. As evening approached, the nurse returned. You, she said sharply to Esi. If payment is not made by tomorrow morning, we discharge her. Esi nodded, her throat tight. I understand. She did not understand how she would survive the night. As they left the hospital, the sky darkened heavy with clouds. Esi tightened her grip on Mame Akosua's arm. Behind them, the red stamp on the file remained a silent mark tying her fate to a world she had never asked to enter. And, somewhere high above the city, Kwame Mensah prepared to make a decision that would change both of their lives, whether he meant to or not. The city did not soften. At night it sharpened. By the time Esi Appiah and Mame Akosua reached their room, the sky over Accra had turned the color of wet ash. Streetlights flickered like tired eyes. The air smelled of fried plantain diesel and rain that refused to fall. Mame Akosua collapsed onto the mat with a groan. Esi knelt beside her, loosening the scarf around the old woman's chest, counting breaths, the way she had learned to count coins. 1, 2, 3. Each pause stretched too long. Esi rose and poured the last of their water into a cup. She helped Mame sip, then pressed her palm against the old woman's forehead. Hot. Too hot. I will go out again, Esi said, though her body begged her to sit. Just for a short while. Mame Akosua's eyes opened. At night I know the watchman at the construction site, Esi replied gently. They need someone to clean after the workers leave. I will be back before midnight. Mame Akosua nodded, fear and trust tangled together. Be careful. Esi wrapped her scarf tighter and stepped into the night. The construction site sat 2 streets away, surrounded by corrugated metal sheets and half-built concrete pillars that reached upward like broken teeth. A generator hummed somewhere inside. Esi cleaned without thinking, sweeping dust-gathering scraps, wiping oil from tools. Her arms ached, but pain was familiar. Fear was worse. She finished close to 11. The watchman handed her a few cedis with an apologetic shrug. That's all for today. Esi thanked him anyway. On her way back, she noticed a small crowd gathered near the closed bus stop. Voices overlapped, irritation, curiosity, impatience. At the center of it all, a young woman sat on the pavement, her leg twisted at an unnatural angle. Blood darkened the hem of her skirt. A taxi had clipped her while speeding through the junction. The driver was gone. People watched. No one moved. Esi did not hesitate. She dropped her bag and knelt. "Can you hear me?" she asked. The woman nodded weakly. Esi tore a strip from her scarf and pressed it against the bleeding. "Stay with me." Someone muttered, "She's not a doctor." Esi looked up. Then call 1. Silence. She adjusted her grip, keeping pressure on the wound, murmuring to the woman until an ambulance finally arrived. By then Esi's hands were slick with blood, her knees numb from the concrete. As the medics lifted the injured woman, one of them glanced at Esi. "You did well." Esi only nodded. Praise felt dangerous, like a luxury she couldn't afford. She hurried home, washing her hands at the outdoor tap until the water ran clear. Her heart pounded not from what she'd done, but from the clock ticking in her mind. Tomorrow morning. Payment. Across the city in a glass-walled penthouse, overlooking the lights, Kwame Mensah stood by his window, with a drink he had not touched. He should have been reviewing reports. Instead, the image from the hospital replayed in his mind. A young woman kneeling, giving away her food without looking around to see who was watching. It bothered him. People were kind when it served them. He had learned that lesson early, long before the company, long before the money. Kindness was a tool, sympathy a currency. So why had she done it? His assistant's voice broke the silence. "Sir, the hospital sent an inquiry about a patient file." Kwame turned. "Which file?" The assistant hesitated. "An elderly woman. There's a stamp from Mensah Global Holdings on the billing document. They're asking for clarification." Kwame frowned. "That's not standard," I know, the assistant said carefully. "But the stamp is genuine." Kwame set the glass down. "Find out who authorized it." "Yes, sir." When the assistant left, Kwame sat heavily in his chair. A genuine stamp did not appear by accident. Someone inside his company had used his name, his power, without permission. And the girl. Esi Appiah. He pulled up the security feed from the hospital. There she was again on a grainy screen, counting coins, swallowing humiliation, walking away without a scene. Not an actress, he decided. Too tired for that. Still, he told himself the tired people could be dangerous. Desperation made liars creative. Morning arrived too soon. Esi woke to Mame Akosua's coughs tearing through the room. She helped her sit, rubbing her back, whispering prayers she wasn't sure she believed anymore. They reached the hospital, just after 8. The nurse at the counter recognized them immediately. "Payment." Esi placed the new bills beside the coins from yesterday. Her hands trembled. The nurse counted, stopped, shook her head. Still short. Esi felt something inside her crack. Please, she cannot leave. The nurse sighed, already turning away. Rules. A familiar voice cut through the noise. Wait. Esi turned. Kwame Mensah stood a few steps behind them, dressed simply without the armor of cameras and board members. His presence changed the air. Staff straightened, conversations hushed. He looked at the file, then at Esi. Really looked. You, he said. Not unkindly, not kindly either. Come with me. Esi's heart slammed against her ribs. She glanced at Mame Akosua, fear blazing in her eyes. Please, Esi said. She needs treatment. She will receive it, Kwame replied. But I need answers. He did not wait for agreement. They followed him to a quiet corridor. Kwame turned his expression unreadable. Do you know why my company's stamp is on that file? He asked. Esi shook her head. No. Have you contacted anyone from Mensah Global Holdings? No. Do you know anyone who works there? No. Her answers came too fast, too honest. Kwame studied her face, searching for the crack where deception usually hid. He found only exhaustion. You helped someone last night, he said suddenly. As he blinked. What at the bus stop? An accident. He watched her carefully. Why, Esi frowned, confused by the question. Because she was hurt. That's not an answer. It is, Esi said quietly. It was enough. Something in her tone, flat, unperformative, landed hard. Kwame looked away. I will handle the hospital, he said after a moment. But understand this, I do not do charity. If my name is being used, I will uncover why. Esi nodded. I don't want charity. That surprised him. I want her to live. Esi continued, her voice steady now. And I want the truth. Nothing more. Kwame met her eyes. For the first time in years, he felt unsure. As he walked away to make a call, Esi returned to Mame Akosua's bedside, unaware that a line had been crossed quietly, irrevocably. Kwame Mensah had seen her choose compassion twice without reward, and that unsettled him, far more than any lie ever could. Accra had a way of turning private pain into public spectacle. After the hospital corridor confrontation, Esi Appiah returned to the ward with Mame Akosua's file pressed to her chest, as if it might keep the old woman alive. True to his word, Kwame Mensah's call changed everything within minutes. A nurse who had dismissed Esi the day before now spoke in a softer voice. The pharmacy window opened faster. A doctor appeared without being begged. But relief didn't feel like relief. It felt like a debt. Esi sat beside Mame Akosua's bed, watching the IV drip, listening to the old woman's breathing grow steadier. The ward still smelled of bleach and bodies. The walls still held the same groans and prayers. The only difference was that now the staff looked at Esi as if she had suddenly become dangerous, like someone with invisible connections. Mame Akosua opened her eyes. Esi. What happened? Esi forced her face to remain calm. They agreed to continue treatment. Because of him, Mame whispered. It wasn't a question. Esi didn't answer. She had learned not to trust good turns. When something changed too fast, it usually meant someone powerful had shifted the board-moving pieces with hands that never got dirty. Across the ward, Dr. Kojo Antwi approached, his tired eyes briefly kind. Your grandmother is stable for now, he said. But she needs medication consistently, and there will be tests. Esi nodded, swallowing the fear rising in her throat. How much? Dr. Antwi hesitated, then lowered his voice. More than you can carry in coins, Esi. She stared at him. Then why? Someone called, he interrupted gently, not wanting to say the name. In Ghana, names like Kwame Mensah could fill a room without being spoken. For today, focus on her. For tomorrow, we'll see. Esi thanked him, though gratitude tasted bitter. She didn't want a today that collapsed into a nightmare tomorrow. By afternoon, Mame Akosua fell into a deeper sleep, the medicine finally dulling her pain. Esi sat until her legs numbed, then rose to leave. She needed food. She needed money. She needed control over something. Outside the hospital, she took a long breath and headed toward Makola Market, where the city's heartbeat never stopped. If she could earn enough before night, she could pay at least part of tomorrow's bill without needing anyone's call. The market was loud with life vendors calling radios, blasting trotros, honking, and the metallic clatter of coins passing hands. Esi moved through the chaos like someone who had been trained by hunger, fast, careful, invisible. She found Auntie Appiah at her usual spot, selling tomatoes and smoked fish under a faded umbrella. Auntie Esi greeted. Appiah's eyes narrowed with recognition. "You, the orphan girl." Esi kept her expression neutral. The word orphan didn't sting anymore. It was simply her name in this world. "I need work," Esi said. "Anything. Carrying loads, washing, cleaning." Appiah clicked her tongue. "You were gone for 2 days. My mommy is in the hospital." Appiah's face softened for half a second, then hardened again. Survival didn't allow softness to stay long. People with sick family always want credit. "Number. If you work, you get paid at the end of the day." "I understand." Appiah tossed her a woven basket. "Go. Deliver these to the fabric stall near the spice corner, and don't lose anything." Esi nodded and lifted the basket onto her head. The weight pressed down, but she was used to pressure. Pressure was her normal. She delivered one basket, then another. She ran errands between stalls, carried sacks, swept a shop floor when asked, and accepted small notes and coins with a quiet thank you. No one offered pity, and she did not ask for it. But as the sun lowered and the market grew hotter with bodies, Esi noticed something shifting around her. Stares. Whispering. Fingers pointing. At first she ignored it. People talked. They always did. Then she heard her name. Esi Appiah. She turned. A teenage boy stood near Appiah's stall, eyes wide. "They're saying you have a rich man behind you." Esi's stomach tightened. "Who is saying that?" The boy shrugged, already backing away as if being near her could bring trouble. "Everyone." Esi tried to swallow her fear. Rumors could kill faster than hunger. In places like Makola, a story, true or not, could turn a crowd into a weapon. She returned to Appiah's stall to collect her pay. Appiah looked up slowly, her gaze colder than before. "So you didn't tell me?" Esi frowned. "Tell you what?" Appiah leaned forward. "That you are now walking with big men." Esi's throat went dry. "I'm not." "Don't lie," Appiah snapped. "This morning you were begging me for work. Now people are saying the CEO of Mensa Global Holdings was seen speaking to you at the hospital." Esi's heart sank. It was already spreading, already twisting into something ugly. "I didn't ask him to speak to me," Esi said carefully. "I didn't ask him for anything," Appiah scoffed. "That's what they all say." Esi reached for her earnings. "Please, I just want my pay." Appiah slapped Esi's hand away. "Wait, first I must count my money." Esi's jaw tightened, but she stepped back. She watched Appiah pull open a small tin under the stall where cash was kept wrapped in plastic. Appiah counted quickly, lips moving. Then she froze. Her face changed. "Hey," Appiah whispered. Then louder, my money." She dug deeper into the tin as if the missing notes might appear out of fear. Her eyes snapped to Esi. "You," she hissed, "you have stolen from me." Esi blinked, stunned. "What?" Appiah's voice rose. "Don't pretend I had 30 CDs wrapped here. Now it is gone. You were the one standing closest." Heads turned. Nearby vendors leaned in. A circle began to form like smoke gathering. Esi's chest tightened. "Auntie Appiah." "I didn't search her," someone shouted. "Always these poor girls." Another voice spat. They come pretending to work, then steal. Esi shook her head, heart pounding. I did not take anything. Please check the tin again. Appiah pointed a shaking finger at Esi. You think I am stupid. You think because you have a rich man behind you, you can do anything. Esi's mouth opened, but no sound came. The accusation wasn't just theft. It was hatred, dressed as moral judgment. A man pushed forward one of the market security guards, big, sweaty, impatient. What is happening? He demanded. She stole my money, Appiah cried, voice now theatrical, as if the crowd itself was fuel. Search her. The guard grabbed Esi's arm hard. Pain shot through her. Stop, Esi protested, pulling back. I didn't steal. I'm begging you. But begging only sounded like guilt to people who wanted a villain. The guard yanked open her small bag. Inside were only coins, a torn cloth, and Mayame Akosua's hospital card. He shook it upside down. Coins spilled to the ground. The crowd laughed. Then Appiah's eyes widened dramatically. There, Esi, followed her gaze. A folded note, 20 cedis, lay near Esi's sandals, half covered by dust as if it had fallen out of her bag. Esi froze. She knew it wasn't hers. She didn't even have 20 cedis at once. Not ever. Her mind raced. How did it get there? When did it appear who the crowd didn't wait for answers? Answers were boring. Outrage was entertainment. Caught, someone yelled. Thief beat. Hey! Her Esi's body went cold. She stepped back, palms raised. That is not mine. I swear, I didn't take it. Appiah's face twisted in triumph and disgust. Look at her acting innocent. The rich man's girlfriend stealing from us. Esi's eyes burned. I am not anyone's. The guard grabbed her tighter. You will come with me. Panic surged. If she was taken to the police station, Mame Akosua would be alone. If she was locked up tomorrow's hospital, ultimatum would become a death sentence. Esi fought to keep her voice steady. Please, let me call the hospital. My mame, always story, the guard growled. Move. A hand slapped her shoulder. Another pushed her. Someone spat near her feet. The circle tightened, hungry for punishment. And then a voice cut through the noise, sharp, controlled. Enough. The crowd stilled slightly, not out of respect for Esi, but because the tone carried authority. A black SUV had pulled up near the market entrance, sleek and out of place among the dust and chaos. Two men stepped out in suits, scanning the crowd with practiced eyes. Esi didn't see the man inside the vehicle yet, but she felt the air change like a storm about to break. Appiah's mouth opened, ready to shout louder to claim righteousness. The guard tightened his grip as if daring anyone to challenge him. Esi's breath caught as the SUV door opened. A polished shoe touched the ground, and a familiar, unreadable presence stepped forward. Kwame Mensah. He had not come to rescue her. Not yet. His gaze moved from the crowd to Esi's face, and for a single heartbeat, Esi saw something she couldn't name, calculation, mixed with discomfort, as if he had expected corruption in his company, but not cruelty so raw in the streets. The market held its breath. Esi's voice came out small. I didn't do it. Kwame did not respond immediately, and the terrifying part was this: Esi could not tell if he believed her. Silence spread through Makola Market. Like oil on water, Kwame Mensah stood just beyond the circle of bodies, his presence bending the noise downward until even the radios seemed to quiet. He did not raise his voice. He did not gesture. He simply looked first at the 20 cedi note on the ground, then at Esi Appiah's face, then at the guard's hand locked around her arm. Let her go, he said. The guard hesitated. He recognized power when it stood in front of him, but he also recognized the eyes of a crowd, eager to see blood. Sir, he began. There is evidence Kwame's gaze did not move. Let her go. The grip loosened. Esi felt her arm slip free and staggered back a step, steadying herself. Her heart hammered so loudly she could barely hear anything else. She did not thank him. Gratitude felt premature, like kneeling before a verdict was passed. Appiah pushed forward, her voice sharp with righteousness. "Sir, she stole from me. We saw it. The money is there." Kwame nodded once, acknowledging the claim without agreeing to it. "I saw money on the ground," he said. "That is not the same thing." He crouched and picked up the folded note. It was clean, too clean for a market floor where dust clung to everything. He rubbed it between his fingers, then straightened. "Whose is this?" he asked. Appiah lifted her chin. "Mine." Kwame looked at her. "How much was missing?" 30 cedis, Appiah replied quickly. Kwame's eyes flicked to the note. "This is 20. Appiah opened her mouth, then closed it. The crowd shifted, sensing the weakness. Kwame continued, calm as ever. "Show me the place where you keep your money." Appiah hesitated. "Sir, this is a small matter. Why trouble yourself? Show me." With shaking hands, Appiah opened the tin beneath her stall. Kwame leaned in, not touching anything. He pointed. "There," he said, "behind the cloth." Appiah followed his finger and froze. She reached in and pulled out a crumpled bundle, 30 cedis, tied with a rubber band. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Appiah's face drained of color. I must have." Kwame straightened. "Mistakes happen," he said. "But accusations have consequences." He turned to the guard. "You will apologize." The guard's jaw tightened. He glanced at the crowd, then at the SUV. "I'm sorry," he muttered to Esi. Esi nodded once. Her hands shook, but she kept them still. Kwame looked at Appiah again. "And you?" Appiah swallowed. I'm sorry. It was not sincere. It did not need to be." Kwame handed the 20 cedi note back to Appiah. "Be careful where you throw your lies," he said quietly. "Someone might step on them." He turned away as if the matter were finished. But Esi remained rooted to the spot. The crowd began to disperse, disappointed that there would be no punishment to feast on. Whispers followed Kwame as he walked toward his SUV. Some were impressed, others resentful. Power always left fingerprints. Esi watched him go, a knot tightening in her chest. "Wait," she said, her voice breaking through the murmurs. Kwame paused. He turned slowly. Esi took a step forward, then another. Her legs felt unsteady, but she forced herself to meet his eyes. "I didn't ask you to come," she said. "And I didn't ask you to defend me." Kwame studied her, curious. "I know. Then why?" Her voice trembled despite her effort. "Why are you here?" He considered the question as if weighing whether the truth would cost him more than a lie. "Because something is wrong," he said finally. "And when my name is used to hurt someone, it becomes my business." Esi's mouth tightened. "Your name is already hurting someone." Kwame's brow furrowed. "Explain." "The hospital," Esi said. "People look at me differently now. They think I have connections. They think I am protected." "You are," Kwame said simply. Esi shook her head. "That is the problem." He did not respond immediately. "I don't want protection," she continued. "I want fairness. I want to work to pay to be left alone. Every time someone like you steps in, it costs me something I can't afford." Kwame felt the words land sharp and unexpected. He had spent his life believing intervention was generosity. He had never considered it might be theft. "Come," he said after a moment. "We should talk." Esi's stomach twisted. "We're not here." She hesitated. Every instinct screamed at her to refuse. But Mame Akosua's face rose in her mind, pale, fragile, waiting. "I can't leave her," Esi said. Kwame nodded. "I know. The hospital." They walked in silence to the SUV. Esi climbed in her hands, folded tightly in her lap. The door closed with a soft thud that sounded final. As the car pulled away, Makola Market swallowed the space they had occupied, returning to noise and trade as if nothing had happened. At the hospital, the atmosphere shifted the moment the SUV arrived. Staff straightened, conversations stopped mid-sentence. Doors opened that had been closed. Esi hated it. Kwame walked ahead, not touching her, not guiding her. That distance felt intentional, like a line he refused to cross without permission. They stopped in a quiet office, near the administration wing. Kwame closed the door. "Sit," he said. Esi remained standing. "Say what you need to say." He studied her again, this time without suspicion. "You were framed," he said. "At the market, I know. And you didn't panic," he added. "You didn't beg. Begging doesn't save you," Esi replied. "It just teaches people how much you're worth." Kwame exhaled slowly. "You don't trust me?" "No," Esi said. "I don't. Because I'm rich, because you're powerful," she corrected. "There's a difference." He leaned against the desk, folding his arms. "My company's stamp appeared on your file. That is not an accident. Someone inside Mensa Global Holdings is responsible." Esi's eyes narrowed. "And you think that makes me safe? It makes you important," he said. She laughed, once bitter. "Important people don't get dragged through markets." Kwame flinched. "I will find who did this," he said, "and I will stop it." Esi shook her head. "You can stop a person. You can't stop what people believe. Today it was theft. Tomorrow it will be something worse." Kwame felt the weight of truth in her words. He had built systems to control outcomes, to manage risk. He had never considered belief as a force he could not regulate. "What do you want, then?" he asked. Esi hesitated. She had never been asked that by someone who could actually give it. "I want my mommy treated like a human being," she said. "Not a charity case, not a favor, a patient." Kwame nodded. "That can be arranged. And I want the truth," she continued. "About why your company's name is on our lives now." Kwame's jaw tightened. "So do I." There was a knock at the door. A nurse peeked in. "Sir, the patient's condition is stable." Esi's shoulders sagged with relief. Kwame looked at her, something shifting behind his eyes. "I'm not your enemy," he said quietly. Esi met his gaze, exhaustion etched into her face. "You don't have to be my enemy to hurt me." He did not argue. Instead, he opened the door. "I will take responsibility for what comes next," he said. "But understand this, until I uncover the truth, you will stay where I can ensure no one touches you again." Esi's heart clenched. "That sounds like a cage." Kwame paused. "It doesn't have to be." She thought of the market, the crowd, the hands, the lies. Then she thought of Mame Akosua, breathing easier behind a thin curtain. "Fine," Esi said softly. "But I walk in by choice." Kwame inclined his head. "As you wish." As they left the office, neither of them noticed the figure watching from the corridor's far end, a man whose eyes followed Kwame with careful calculation. Richard Owusu had seen the SUV at the market, and he understood immediately that something dangerous had begun. Esi Appiah did not sleep that night. Even after Mame Akosua's breathing steadied and the nurses stopped hovering like impatient birds, Esi remained awake on the plastic chair beside the bed, eyes fixed on the curtain's edge. Every sound, footsteps, a distant cough, the squeak of a trolley wheel made her body tense. Her mind kept replaying the market, the crowd closing in the guard's grip, Abena's triumphant voice. And then the black SUV. And then Kwame Mensah stepping out like the world belonged to him. He had saved her from violence, yes, but he had also placed a spotlight on her back. A poor orphan girl did not become protected without becoming a target. Around midnight, Dr. Kojo Antwi came by for a quick check. He lowered his voice the way people did when they spoke about powerful names. "The bill for tonight is covered," he said. But tomorrow I know Esi cut in quietly. Tomorrow always comes with a price. The doctor studied her face. You're angry. Esi's lips pressed together. I'm tired. Tired people still deserve mercy, he said gently. Esi looked at Mame Akoswa's sleeping face. Mercy doesn't keep you alive in this city. Only money does. Dr. Antwi did not argue. He only patted the bed rail and walked away. By morning, the hospital had transformed. Not in reality, there were still too many patients, too few beds, the same peeling paint and old fans turning slow circles overhead, but in attitude. Nurses who barely acknowledged Esi yesterday now greeted her with stiff politeness. A clerk who had mocked her coins the day before avoided her eyes. Esi hated it so much her stomach hurt. At 9, a young man in a suit approached her. His posture was respectful, but his confidence screamed corporate training. Ms. Appiah, he said, Mr. Mensah would like to see you. Now. Esi's chest tightened. I'm not leaving her. He anticipated that the man replied. The meeting will take place in the private consultation room, 2 minutes from here. Esi glanced at Mame Akoswa. The old woman was awake, blinking slowly, trying to understand the new world forming around them. Esi, she whispered. I'm here, Esi said, taking her hand. I'll be right outside, I promise. Mame Akoswa squeezed weakly. Don't let them swallow you. Esi swallowed hard. I won't. She followed the suited man down a quieter corridor past offices that smelled like paper and disinfectant. The consultation room door stood open. Kwame Mensah was inside alone. No cameras, no assistants, no board members. Just him seated in a chair that looked too expensive for a hospital that couldn't afford clean sheets. He rose when she entered, not politely, not warmly, simply acknowledging the moment. Sit, he said. Esi remained standing. Speak. Kwame's gaze held hers. He wasn't used to being addressed like that. Most people softened around him without realizing it, shaping their words into safer forms. You're stubborn, he observed. I'm careful, Esi corrected. Kwame gestured to the chair again. Fine, stand, but listen. He slid a thin envelope onto the table. It was clean, crisp, heavy with meaning. Take it, he said. Esi's eyes narrowed. What is it? Cash Kwame replied, matter of fact. Enough to cover your hospital costs for the next month, and enough for you to eat without counting coins. Esi stared at the envelope, then at him. Her mouth went dry. A month. A month meant Mame Akoswa might survive. A month meant no more begging at the billing window. A month meant fewer nights walking home in fear. Her hands twitched at her sides, but she did not reach for it. No, she said. Kwame blinked once. Excuse me? Esi's voice remained steady, though her pulse thundered. I said no. The air shifted, the kind of silence that happened when an animal refused a leash. Do you understand what I'm offering? Kwame asked, his tone tightening. Yes, Esi said. That's why I'm refusing. His jaw flexed. You would rather watch your mame suffer than accept help. Esi's eyes flashed. Don't do that. Do what use her pain to corner me, Esi said, voice low. That's not help. That's control. Kwame stared at her as if she had spoken in a language he didn't recognize. You think money is control, he said slowly. In the wrong hands it is, Esi replied. And you don't know me. You don't know what I've survived. Every time someone powerful helps me, it comes with a hook. Kwame leaned forward, hands on the table. And what hook do you think I want? Esi hesitated. Not because she didn't have answers, but because saying them out loud felt dangerous. I don't know, she admitted. That's the point. Kwame sat back, exhaling through his nose. You believe I brought you here to trap you. I believe people like you don't intervene for nothing, Esi said. Not because you're evil. because your world teaches you that nothing is free. Kwame's eyes hardened. My world taught me that kindness is often fake. Esi held his gaze. Then you've been around the wrong kind of people. For a moment, Kwame looked as if he might snap. Instead, he reached into his suit pocket and pulled out a document, a copy of the hospital billing sheet, with the red stamp. This stamp, he said, tapping the page, belongs to my company. It was used on your file, without my authorization. Esi's throat tightened. So someone inside your company did it. Yes, Kwame said, and I intend to find out who. Esi's mind raced. If someone powerful was playing with her life, then her fear wasn't paranoia. It was instinct. What do you want from me? She asked. The truth, Kwame replied. Everything you know, everyone you've spoken to, every place you've been in the last week. Esi's shoulders stiffened. That sounds like an interrogation. Kwame didn't deny it. It is. Esi's lips curved into a humorless smile. And there it is. Kwame's gaze sharpened. If you think I'm your enemy, you're wrong. But I won't pretend I trust you either. Esi's voice turned quiet, almost tired. Trust isn't built by suspicion. It's built by respect. Kwame stared at her like the word respect had never been directed at him as a requirement. He stood pushing the envelope toward her again. Take the money. Consider it a temporary solution. Esi stepped back. If I take that, everyone will say I sold myself. You shouldn't care what they say, Kwame snapped. Esi's eyes lifted fierce. That's easy for you. Your reputation is armor. Mine is skin. The words hit harder than a slap. Kwame's face shifted something like guilt trying to enter a room pride had locked for years. He looked away. Then what do you propose? Esi took a breath. Pay the hospital directly if you must. Not through my hands. Keep my name off your money. Kwame frowned. Why? Because I don't want to owe you, Esi said. I want my mame to live, but I will not become a story people whisper about another poor girl bought by a rich man. Kwame studied her for a long moment. Then slowly, he nodded once. Fine, he said. I'll cover the hospital costs through official corporate channels. A donation. No envelope. No rumor of a handoff. Esi's shoulders loosened just slightly. Kwame added quieter now. But in return, you cooperate with my investigation. Esi's gaze narrowed. That's still a trade. It's a partnership, Kwame corrected. I want the truth. You want safety. Esi hesitated. Partnership was a word rich people used when they wanted obedience packaged politely. But she also knew the alternative being alone, against a hidden enemy with access to corporate stamps and hospital systems. All right, she said at last. I'll tell you what I know. Kwame nodded. Good. As if on cue, the door opened without a knock. A woman stepped in, tall, elegant, dressed in cream and gold, her hair perfectly styled. Her eyes flicked to Esi like a blade deciding where to cut. Nana Serwaya Mensa. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Kwame, she said smoothly. So it's true. You really brought her into this. Kwame's expression cooled. This isn't your business. Nana Serwa's gaze lingered on Esi's worn dress, her tired face, the stubborn set of her jaw. Then she looked back at Kwame, voice honeyed with poison. Everything connected to your name is my business, she said. And this girl, this orphan, has your name swirling around her like smoke. Esi felt her stomach drop. The enemy was no longer hidden behind rumors. She was standing in the doorway, perfectly dressed, perfectly calm, ready to turn Esi's life into a scandal. And somewhere in the background of all this, Richard Owusu didn't even need to appear to be dangerous. His kind of threat moved quietly through papers and signatures and stamps. Kwame stepped closer to Nana Serwa, lowering his voice. Leave. Nana Serwa smiled wider. No, not yet. Esi watched them both, realizing the truth with a chill that settled in her bones. The money wasn't the trap. The world surrounding it was. Nana Sirwa Mensa did not raise her voice. She didn't need to. Power Esi Appiah was learning often whispered. It smiled. It stood perfectly still and waited for you to make a mistake. I didn't come to argue, Nana Sirwa said, closing the door behind her with a soft click. I came to understand. Kwame Mensa turned toward her, his posture rigid. There's nothing to understand. Nana Sirwa's eyes slid back to Esi. They moved slowly, taking in the faded dress, the worn sandals, the exhaustion etched into her face. The look wasn't disgust, it was calculation. So this is her, Nana Sirwa murmured. The girl who suddenly appears at the hospital with our company's name stamped on her life. Esi felt heat rise in her chest. I didn't put your company's name anywhere. Nana Sirwa smiled politely. Of course you didn't. No one ever does. Kwame stepped between them, slightly an unconscious shield. That's enough. Nana Sirwa raised an eyebrow. Is it? Because from where I'm standing, your judgment has become sentimental. The word landed like an accusation. I'm handling an internal issue, Kwame said. That's all. And dragging an orphan into it, Nana Sirwa countered. Do you know how this looks? Esi's hands curled into fists at her sides. She was tired of being talked about like a file passed across a desk. It looks like someone used your power without permission, Esi said quietly. And now you're afraid of what people will say if the truth comes out. Nana Sirwa's gaze snapped to her. For a long moment, the room felt too small. You're bold, Nana Sirwa said slowly. Boldness is dangerous when you don't understand the terrain. Esi met her stare. I understand it very well. I've lived at the bottom of it my whole life. Kwame exhaled sharply. Nana, leave. Nana Sirwa studied him, then nodded once. We will talk later, she said softly. Alone. She turned back to Esi, her smile returning thin-controlled. Be careful, child. Men like Kwame don't rescue people. They correct problems. With that, she walked out. The door closed. Esi released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Kwame rubbed a hand over his face. I'm sorry. Esi looked at him. For her, or for me. Kwame didn't answer. Later that afternoon, after Nana Sirwa left the hospital and the corridor returned to its usual rhythm of suffering and survival, Esi found herself sitting beside Mame Akosua again. The old woman's eyes were open, now clearer than they had been in days. She watched Esi with quiet concern. You are carrying a storm, Mame Akosua said. Esi forced a smile. It will pass. Mame Akosua shook her head slightly. Storms don't pass by pretending they aren't there. Esi took the old woman's hand, feeling the bones beneath the skin. I don't want trouble, Mame. You never do, Mame replied. But trouble knows your name. Esi hesitated, then spoke softly. There is a man, a powerful one. He says he wants to help. Mame Akosua's eyes sharpened. Help has many faces. I know, Esi whispered. That's why I don't trust it. Mame Akosua squeezed her hand weakly. Then trust yourself. Esi swallowed. Trusting herself had kept her alive this long, but it had also kept her alone. That evening, Kwame returned. Not with documents, not with envelopes, with questions. They sat in the small waiting area outside the ward, the hum of machines filling the silence between them. Tell me about your childhood, Kwame said. Esi stiffened. Why? Because patterns matter, he replied. People don't appear out of nowhere. Esi stared at the floor. She hadn't spoken about her childhood in years, not fully, not honestly. Words had a way of reopening wounds that never really closed. I was 8 when my parents died, she said finally. A road accident. One moment they were there, the next they weren't. Kwame remained silent. I went to live with relatives, Esi continued. They took the insurance money. They kept me because the church watched. When the church stopped asking questions, they sent me away." She paused, forcing herself to continue. Another home, another promise, another disappointment. Kwame's jaw tightened. "By 12 I understood something," Esi said. "No one keeps you unless you're useful." Kwame looked at her then, and Mame Akosua. Esi's eyes softened. She found me sleeping behind her stall. She didn't ask where I came from. She didn't ask what I could give her. She just brought me home. "She raised you. She protected me," Esi corrected. "There's a difference." Kwame absorbed that quietly. "That's why I don't trust help," Esi said. "Because help always wanted something back, and when you didn't pay it became punishment." Kwame leaned back, the weight of her words settling over him. "I didn't grow up poor," he said slowly, "but I grew up watching kindness fail." Esi glanced at him surprised. "My father built this company from nothing," Kwame continued. "People smiled at him, praised him, promised loyalty. Then they stole from him, betrayed him, left him bleeding when the money dried up." Kwame's voice hardened. "I learned early that kindness makes you weak." Esi shook her head. "No, it just makes you human." Kwame looked away. The next day, the investigation began, in earnest. Kwame's team moved quietly, reviewing logs, tracing approvals, tracking access to corporate stamps. Esi stayed close to Mame Akosua, pretending the world hadn't begun shifting around her. But it had. Nurses whispered when Esi passed. Not cruelly this time, but with curiosity. Security guards watched her more closely, not to protect her, to measure her. By afternoon, Kwame returned with a tight expression. "Someone authorized the stamp," he said. "Not officially, but the access trail is there." "Who?" Esi asked. Kwame hesitated. "Not yet." That answer frightened her more than any name. "Do they know about me?" she asked. "Yes." Esi's stomach dropped. "Then why am I still here?" Kwame met her gaze. "Because whoever did this underestimated you." Esi didn't feel underestimated. She felt exposed. That night she dreamed of the market again, hands reaching, voices accusing, the ground falling away beneath her feet. She woke with a heart racing, and for the first time since she was a child, she realized something that terrified her more than hunger. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was standing in the path of powerful people who didn't like being seen. The next morning, as Esi stepped out to get water, she nearly collided with a man in a suit standing near the ward entrance, Richard Owusu. She recognized him from the photos on the company website. Clean smile, careful eyes, the kind of man who looked trustworthy until you needed him to be. "Miss Appiah," he said pleasantly. "We haven't met." Esi's pulse quickened. "I'm busy." "Of course you are," Richard said smoothly. "But I thought it would be wise to introduce myself." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Some storms don't pass," he added. "They consume." Esi stared at him, fear coiling tight in her chest. "I didn't ask for this." Richard smiled. "No one ever does." He walked away as calmly as he had arrived. Esi stood frozen, understanding, dawning with painful clarity. The trap wasn't money. It wasn't protection. It was attention. And now that she had it, there would be no quiet way out. The offer arrived wrapped in polite language. Kwame Mensah didn't present it as a command. He didn't summon Esi Appiah to a boardroom or send another suited messenger. Instead, he waited until late afternoon, when Mame Akosua was sleeping more comfortably, and the ward had settled into its familiar rhythm of murmurs and machines. They stood near the window at the end of the corridor, Accra's skyline blurred by heat and dust. "You shouldn't stay here," Kwame said. Esi's shoulders stiffened. "I'm not leaving her." "I'm not asking you to," he replied. "I'm asking you to stop living in places where anyone can reach you." Esi turned to him. This is what safety sounds like to people with walls and gates. Kwame didn't rise to the bait. Someone used my company's authority to pull you into this, until I know who and why you're exposed. I was exposed before your company ever learned my name, Esi said. At least then I knew where the danger came from. Kwame considered her words. Now it comes from people who hide. Esi crossed her arms. So what is it you're offering? A temporary residence, Kwame said. Company-owned, discreet, secure. You can come and go. No press, no staff hovering. Just a place where no one can reach you without me knowing. Esi laughed once short and humorless. You make it sound like a favor. It's a precaution, Kwame replied. One I would extend to any witness connected to a corporate investigation. Witness, Esi repeated. That's a convenient name for someone who can't leave. Kwame's jaw tightened. You can refuse. Esi looked back toward the ward. She imagined her room behind the kiosks, thin walls, open windows, footsteps passing by at night. She imagined Richard Owusu's smile and Nana Sirwa's measuring eyes. Where is it, she asked. Kwame named the neighborhood. Quiet, expensive, far from Makola. Esi nodded slowly. And Mame Akosua. She stays here until she's cleared for discharge, Kwame said. After that, she can join you. Esi hesitated. The word join hung heavy. Everything about the offer was reasonable, and that was what frightened her most. When she asked, tonight, Kwame said, before this becomes gossip. By evening, the arrangements moved quickly. Too quickly. A driver arrived with a black sedan, unmarked windows tinted just enough to feel like a secret. Esi packed what little she had into a small bag, clothes, Mame Akosua's scarf, a folded photo of two smiling adults she barely remembered. As she stood at Mame Akosua's bedside, guilt pressed into her chest. I'll be back tomorrow, Esi promised. I won't let them move you without me. Mame Akosua studied her face. They are watching you. Yes. Then remember, the old woman said softly, safety can become another kind of cage if you forget who you are. Esi nodded. I won't. But as she walked away, she wasn't sure that was true. The apartment was quiet, in a way that felt unnatural. It sat on the third floor of a low-rise building with trimmed hedges and a gate that opened without a sound. Inside, everything smelled clean and unused. White walls, neutral furniture, no personal items. A place meant to be temporary. This is too much, Esi said as she stepped inside. Kwame stood near the doorway, hands clasped behind his back. It's standard. For you, Esi replied. He inclined his head. For anyone under protection. Esi turned eyes sharp. I didn't agree to protection. I agreed to safety. Kwame met her gaze. They often look the same at first. A knock came at the door. A woman entered with a clipboard, her expression professional and distant. I'll need you to sign these, she said to Esi. House rules, visitor policy, emergency contacts. Esi skimmed the pages. Her name appeared everywhere. Signatures, initials, lines drawn carefully to look like choices. Who else has access? Esi asked. The woman glanced at Kwame before answering. Only authorized personnel. Names, Esi said. The woman hesitated, then listed two, both company security. Esi signed her pen, pressing harder than necessary. When the door finally closed behind the woman, Esi stood alone in the living room, the hum of the air conditioner filling the space. This feels like surveillance, she said. Kwame didn't deny it. It's oversight. Another word, Esi replied. Same meaning. Kwame took a step closer, then stopped, respecting the boundary she hadn't spoken, but had made clear. I don't want to own your life, he said. I want to keep it from being destroyed. Esi looked around the pristine room. By people like you. By people who misuse power, he corrected. Including me if I'm not careful. That surprised her. "You're admitting that Esi asked." Kwame's eyes didn't waver. "I've already admitted it to myself." The first night passed without incident, and that was the problem. Esi lay awake on the unfamiliar bed, listening to nothing. No distant arguments, no generators, no footsteps outside her window. Silence pressed against her ears until her thoughts grew loud. She rose before dawn and stood at the window. The street below was empty, washed clean by sprinklers that ran like clockwork. This neighborhood didn't wake up hungry. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Be careful who you trust." Esi's breath caught. She typed back once, "Who is this?" then erased it. Responding felt like opening a door she couldn't close. Later that morning, Kwame returned with updates. "We've narrowed access to the stamp," he said. "It points to a senior executive." Esi's stomach sank. "Richard Owusu." Kwame didn't confirm it. He didn't have to. "Does he know where I am?" Esi asked. "No," Kwame said. "And he won't." Esi believed him mostly, but Nana Sarwa does, she said. Kwame exhaled. "She suspects." "Suspicion is enough," Esi replied. Kwame nodded. "Which is why we'll keep appearances controlled." "Appearances," Esi repeated. "You mean my image?" "Yes," he said simply. "Until this is resolved." Esi felt the invisible lines tightening. "And what does that require of me?" Kwame paused. "For now, nothing. Stay here. Don't speak to the press. Don't go back to the market. Don't attract attention." Esi laughed softly. "You've already failed at the last one." Kwame didn't smile. "I know." By afternoon, Nana Sarwa's name appeared, where Esi didn't expect it, on a glossy magazine cover left on the apartment's coffee table. The headline praised her leadership, her poise, her role beside Ghana's most admired CEO. Esi stared at the image. Perfect. Untouchable. Her phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. "You don't belong there." Esi set the phone down, hands shaking. She realized then that control didn't arrive with chains. It arrived with convenience, with polished language and quiet expectations. That evening, Kwame called. "I'm sending a stylist tomorrow," he said, "and a media consultant." Esi's chest tightened. "For what damage control?" Kwame replied. "If your name leaks, we'll need to manage the narrative." "I'm not a narrative," Esi said. "In my world," Kwame replied carefully, "everyone is." Silence stretched between them. "I agreed to safety," Esi said at last, "not to becoming a symbol." Kwame's voice softened. "This is temporary. So is trust," Esi replied. When the call ended, Esi sat alone, staring at her reflection in the darkened window. She barely recognized herself there, cleaner sheltered. Watched. She understood something then with chilling clarity. Kwame Mensah wasn't trying to trap her, but the system he ruled was already closing in. And every step meant to protect her was quietly pulling her further away from the only freedom she had ever known, the right to be invisible. Esi Appiah learned the geography of the apartment in silence. She memorized the way the morning light slid across the white tiles, the exact angle where the balcony door caught the sun, the faint hum behind the walls that never stopped. The place was immaculate, too immaculate. Nothing creaked, nothing shifted, nothing told stories. It was a space designed to forget who had been there before. On the third day, she stopped pretending she was a guest. She began to look like someone who needed to understand where she was. Esi opened drawers carefully, not to steal, not to pry, but to orient herself. She needed to know what kind of place she had been placed in. The kitchen held sealed utensils, untouched plates, an instruction manual for appliances more expensive than everything she owned combined. The bedroom closet held spare clothes in neutral colors, her size already labeled. That unsettled her, more than locks. Someone had planned for her presence. She moved to the small study at the far end of the apartment. The door was unlocked. Inside, a desk faced the window. A thin shelf lined one wall, filled mostly with empty folders. Corporate storage. Temporary use. But one drawer resisted when she pulled. Esi paused. Her heart thudded louder than it should have. She tried again, gently this time. The drawer slid open halfway, then stopped. A folder inside caught against the frame. She eased it out. The label made her breath hitch. Akosua Mami. Medical assistant/community outreach. Esi stared at the words, unable to process them. Slowly, she opened the folder. Inside were copies, hospital intake forms, scanned identification records, and a grainy photograph of Mame Akosua, standing outside the church where she used to sweep. The date on the first page was from years ago, long before Mame Akosua collapsed, long before Esi walked into the hospital with coins shaking in her hands. Her fingers trembled as she flipped through the pages. Notes written in a neat professional font referenced beneficiary tracking long-term outreach, unregistered caregiver female, early 20s. That was her. Esi sat down hard in the chair. They had known. Someone had known about Mame Akosua, about her condition, about Esi's role in her life, and they had watched quietly, clinically, until the moment came to intervene. Her mind raced. This wasn't a coincidence. It wasn't even an abuse of power for convenience. It was preparation. Esi closed the folder and sat still, breathing slowly until her vision cleared. She forced herself to think the way survival had taught her, without panic, without hope. Who benefits? The question sharpened everything. Kwame Mensah had said he didn't authorize the stamp. He had said he wanted the truth. And yet this file existed. Detailed. Old. Either he was lying, or someone very close to him had been moving pieces, long before Esi entered the picture. The door clicked softly behind her. Esi stood turning fast. Kwame Mensah paused in the doorway, his expression shifting when he saw the folder in her hands. "You weren't supposed to see that yet," he said. Esi's voice came out steady but cold. "How long?" Kwame exhaled. "Sit." "No," Esi replied. "Answer." He stepped inside and closed the door, choosing his words carefully. The outreach program started years ago. It targeted vulnerable elders, people without documentation, without family support. And Mame Akosua, Esi pressed. She was flagged, Kwame admitted, as someone at risk. And me, Esi asked. When did I become a file? Kwame hesitated. That hesitation told her everything. Before the hospital, he said quietly. But not by me. Esi laughed, once sharp and broken. You keep saying that. Kwame met her gaze. Because it's true. Then who? Esi demanded. Who decided to track my life like a project? Kwame's jaw tightened. Richard Owusu oversees financial compliance and social impact reporting. The room seemed to tilt. So this was never about charity, Esi said. It was about control, about metrics. No, Kwame said quickly. It was about risk management. Making sure aid didn't what Esi cut in. Get wasted on people like me. Kwame flinched. Get exploited. Esi shook her head. You don't protect people by watching them starve until they're useful. Silence fell between them, heavy and accusing. I didn't know about the depth of this, Kwame said. I swear it. Esi looked at him, searching for cracks. She found none, but she also found no comfort. You still benefit from it, she said. Your company gets praise. Your reports look clean. And when something goes wrong, you step in as the hero. Kwame didn't deny it. That's the system. And I'm inside it now, Esi said softly. Kwame stepped closer. You're not trapped. Esi held up the folder. My life has been labeled, categorized, archived. What do you call that? Kwame opened his mouth, then closed it. For the first time since they met, he had no defense. That evening, Esi didn't answer her phone. Messages stacked quietly on the screen. We should talk. You misunderstood. This is for your protection. Protection. The word felt thinner every time she heard it. She left the apartment just after sunset, ignoring the security guard's questioning look. She didn't run. She didn't hide. She walked with purpose toward the one place that still felt real. The hospital. Mame Akosua was awake when she arrived, her eyes following Esi with concern. "You look like you've seen a ghost," the old woman said. Esi sat beside her, taking her hand. "Mame, how long have people from Mensa Global been asking about you?" Mame Akosua frowned. "Sometimes, over the years, they asked questions, offered help. I refused most of it." "Why?" Esi asked. "Because help that comes with papers always wants something back," Mame replied simply. "They wanted to know about you." Esi's chest tightened. "What did you tell them that you were mine?" Mommy said. And that was enough. Tears burned Esi's eyes. "I'm sorry. I brought this to you." Mommy squeezed her hand. "No. They found us." "That is different." Esi rested her forehead against the bed rail, shaking. For the first time she understood the full shape of the danger. Not from hunger, not from the market, but from being seen too clearly by people who believed they were entitled to her story. When Esi returned to the apartment, the air felt different. A woman stood in the living room, impeccably dressed, tablet in hand. "I'm Amma Boteng," she said briskly, "media consultant. I'm here to prepare you." "Prepare me for what?" Esi asked. "For visibility," Amma replied. "There are whispers. We need to control the narrative before it controls you." Esi's stomach dropped. "I didn't agree to this." Amma smiled sympathetically. "You don't have to agree. It's already happening." Esi turned away, rage simmering beneath her skin. Later that night, Kwame called. "You left the apartment," he said. "Yes," Esi replied. "That wasn't wise. Neither was lying by omission," she shot back. Kwame was silent for a moment. "I should have told you." "Yes," Esi said. "You should have." Another pause. "I can shut the program down," Kwame said. "All of it." Esi laughed softly. "You can't shut down what's already inside me." Kwame's voice softened. "Then tell me what you need." Esi stared out the window at the quiet street below. "The truth, in public, not just for me. That will cost me," Kwame said. Esi nodded. "That's what justice costs." When the call ended, Esi sat alone, the folder resting on the table beside her. She finally understood why powerful people feared transparency. Because once the truth was seen, it could not be archived again. Pressure arrived quietly, the way it always did. Not with shouting, not with threats spoken out loud, but with doors that stopped opening, phones that went unanswered, and favors that suddenly expired. Esi Appiah noticed it first at the hospital. When she arrived that morning, the nurse at the desk knew Younger didn't smile. She didn't frown either. She simply looked past Esi, as if she were a piece of furniture. "I'm here to see Mame Akosua," Esi said. The nurse tapped at the computer, eyes narrowing slightly. "Name Akosua. Bed 12. The tapping stopped. The nurse cleared her throat. "Visiting hours are restricted today." Esi's pulse quickened. "Since when?" "Since today." Esi leaned closer. "She's not stable yet." The nurse finally met her eyes. There was something apologetic there, but also fear. "I can't help you." Esi stepped back slowly. She had learned to read rooms like this. When rules changed overnight, it meant someone higher up had spoken. She didn't argue. Arguing never worked when the decision had already been made elsewhere. Instead, she walked down the corridor toward Dr. Kojo Antwi's office. He wasn't there. His door was open, desk cleared, except for a folded note placed carefully at the center. "On leave until further notice." Esi stood still, the weight of it pressing down on her chest. Dr. Antwi had been the only one who spoke to her like a human being. Someone had moved him. Her phone buzzed in her hand. An unknown number. "We warned you about visibility." Esi didn't reply. She walked outside into the courtyard, the sun harsh against her eyes. For a moment she considered calling Kwame Mensah. Then she stopped herself. If she called him every time the ground shifted, she would become exactly what his world expected her to be, dependent. Instead, she walked. The message came again that afternoon, this time without disguise. Richard Owusu didn't send a text. He didn't need to. He appeared. Esi saw him across the hospital car park, standing beside a silver sedan, phone in hand. He ended the call as soon as he noticed her sliding the device into his pocket, with a practiced smile. "Miss Appiah," he said warmly, as if they were old acquaintances. "May we talk?" Esi stopped a few steps away. "I don't think we have anything to say to each other." Richard chuckled softly. "You'd be surprised how often people say that right before important conversations." Esi crossed her arms. "I'm busy." "So am I," Richard replied, "which is why I'll be brief." He gestured toward a bench beneath a tree. Public, visible, safe enough. Esi didn't sit. Richard didn't mind. "I hear you've been asking questions," he said lightly, "about outreach programs, about files that were never meant to be personal." "I didn't ask to be a file," Esi replied. Richard nodded sympathetically. "Of course not. But sometimes people become data before they become problems." Her stomach tightened. "Is that what I am to you?" Richard's smile never wavered. "You are a complication." Esi felt anger rise, but she kept her voice level. "You framed me at the market." Richard's eyes flickered just once. "That's a serious accusation." "You made sure people believed I was a thief," Esi said. "You made sure the hospital staff turned on me." "You moved, Dr. Antwi." Richard sighed as if disappointed. "You see patterns because you're frightened. Fear connects dots that aren't there." Esi leaned forward slightly. "Then why am I not allowed to see Mame Akosua today?" Richard looked at her with something like pity. "Because you are refusing to stay in your lane." "My lane," Esi repeated. "Yes," Richard said calmly. "The lane where assistance is accepted quietly, where gratitude is shown, where stories don't become scandals." Esi laughed once, sharp and bitter. "You mean the lane where people like me disappear?" Richard's expression cooled. "Careful with what Esi shot back. Telling the truth. Truth is contextual," Richard replied, "and context is controlled by those with leverage." Esi's hands trembled, but she didn't look away. "You used Kwame's name without his permission." Richard tilted his head. "You think he didn't benefit?" Esi hesitated. "You think he didn't enjoy stepping in as the savior?" Richard continued. "The decisive CEO correcting a system failure. That image is priceless." "You're wrong," Esi said, though. Doubt flickered inside her. Richard smiled. "Then test him." Esi frowned. "What do you mean? Push this further," Richard said. "Demand transparency. Demand public accountability. See how far his conscience goes when it starts costing him real power." Esi's heart pounded. "Because I promise you this," Richard added, voice dropping. "When it comes to choosing between you and the company, he will choose the company." Esi shook her head. "You don't know him." Richard's smile returned, confident and cruel. "I helped build him." He straightened, smoothing his jacket. "Here's my advice, Miss Appiah. Take what's being offered. Stay quiet. Let Mame Akosua recover. Walk away." "And if I don't?" Esi asked. Richard's eyes hardened. "Then the system will remind you who it was designed for." He turned and walked away without another word. By evening, the reminder arrived. A nurse finally allowed Esi into the ward, only to tell her Mame Akosua's medication had been delayed. The supplier hasn't confirmed payment, she said, not meeting Esi's eyes. That's impossible, Esi replied. It was covered. The nurse shrugged. Then you should speak to administration. Administration redirected her to billing. Billing redirected her to procurement. Procurement closed at 5. Esi stood in the hallway, the walls pressing in. This was how people died, not from illness alone, but from delay. She called Kwame. This time he answered immediately. They're blocking her medication, Esi said without greeting. They moved Dr. Antwi. They're squeezing us. Kwame's voice sharpened. Who spoke to you? Richard Owusu, Esi replied. Silence. He told me you would choose the company over me, she added quietly. Kwame exhaled slowly. He's wrong. Then prove it, Esi said. Because right now Mame Akosua is paying the price for a war she never agreed to. Kwame's tone turned cold. I'm coming. Less than an hour later, the hospital shifted again. This time the change wasn't subtle. Kwame Mensah walked through the corridors with purpose, his presence rippling outward. Calls were made, doors opened, medication arrived. Mame Akosua received her dose within minutes. Esi watched it happen. Relief flooding her body, followed closely by exhaustion. Kwame found her sitting outside the ward, shoulders slumped. This can't continue, he said quietly. Richard is testing boundaries. He's already crossed them, Esi replied. He's using her. Kwame's jaw clenched. I won't allow that. Esi looked up at him, eyes tired but fierce. Then stop managing this quietly. Kwame hesitated. If I go public, you lose control, Esi finished. That's the point. Kwame stared down the corridor, the weight of years of power pressing against a single decision. There will be consequences, he said. There already are, Esi replied. They're just not yours yet. Kwame met her gaze. For the first time, Esi saw uncertainty crack through his certainty. Not weakness, but the realization that doing the right thing would demand sacrifice. I need time, he said. Esi shook her head. Time is a luxury Mame Akosua doesn't have. A long silence stretched between them. Then Kwame spoke, his voice low and resolute. Then we end this, he said, openly. Esi's heart skipped. You mean a board inquiry? Kwame continued. Full audit, public accountability. And Richard, Esi asked. Kwame's eyes darkened. He will fight back. Esi nodded. So will I. Kwame studied her, something like respect settling into his gaze. You shouldn't have to. Esi stood straightening her shoulders. I've been fighting my whole life. The difference now is I won't fight alone. As Kwame walked away to make the call that would set everything in motion, Esi returned to Mame Akosua's bedside, holding her hand. The system was tightening its grip, but for the first time, Esi felt something shift in her favor. Not protection, not charity, alignment. And she knew deep down that once the truth surfaced, there would be no quiet return to the shadows for any of them. The night stretched thin and unforgiving. Esi Appiah sat by Mame Akosua's bed, counting the seconds between breaths, the way she once counted coins. The medication had arrived, yes, but it arrived late, and lateness had a cost the hospital never wrote on receipts. The old woman slept fitfully, her brow creased, her fingers curling and uncurling as if gripping something invisible. Esi leaned close. I'm here, she whispered. I'm not going anywhere. Mame Akosua stirred, her eyes opening to slits. You look tired, she murmured. Esi smiled without warmth. I am. Don't let them frighten you, Mame said. Fear feeds on attention. Esi swallowed. Fear was already fed. Outside the ward, footsteps echoed. Nurses moved with urgency that felt performative. Quick glances, hushed conversations, a sudden flurry that suggested something was about to change again. Esi sensed it in her bones. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. The board meets at dawn. Esi's pulse spiked. She didn't ask how the sender knew. In a world where information flowed upward, secrets always leaked downward. Another message followed. "If you speak tomorrow, she won't survive the week." Esi's hands went cold. She stood abruptly, stepping into the corridor to breathe. The walls felt closer than before. The hospital had become a chessboard, and Mame Akosua, fragile breathing, was the queen. Neither side admitted they were using. Kwame Mensah appeared at the far end of the corridor, jacket, off-tie, loosened eyes dark with a sleepless night's resolve. He stopped when he saw Esi reading her face before she spoke. "They're threatening her," Esi said, indirectly, quietly. Kwame's jaw tightened. "Richard, who else?" Esi replied. "He's tightening the screws. He wants me silent tomorrow." Kwame nodded once. "That confirms what I suspected." "You suspected?" Esi's voice rose despite her effort to keep it low. "My mommy is lying there, and this is confirmation." Kwame stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I've called an emergency audit committee. External, independent." "Independent of what?" Esi asked sharply. "Your power." Kwame didn't flinch. "Independent of me." Esi searched his face, looking for the familiar armor. She saw cracks instead, lines drawn by a choice that couldn't be undone. "They'll move fast," Kwame continued. "Richard will try to bury the trail. He'll offer settlements. He'll leak stories." "About me," Esi said. "Yes," Kwame admitted. "And about you." Esi exhaled slowly. "Then this is it." Kwame nodded. "This is the lowest point. It always is." By morning, the hospital felt different again. Not hostile, not helpful, watchful. Esi noticed the way eyes tracked her steps, the way conversations paused when she entered a room. She felt exposed, skinned by attention she never asked for. Mame Akosua slept exhausted by a night of shallow rest. Esi kissed her forehead and stepped away, bracing herself. In a small conference room off the main corridor, Kwame had set up a temporary command laptops, open phones, charging a few trusted staff standing at a careful distance. The board meeting was scheduled to begin within the hour. Esi sat across from Kwame, hands folded to hide their shaking. "Once this starts," Kwame said, "it won't stop cleanly. Are you ready?" Esi thought of the market. The guard's grip, the note on the ground, the file in the apartment drawer, the delayed medication. "No," she said honestly, "but I'm done being afraid." Kwame inclined his head. "That's enough." A call came in. Kwame put it on speaker. "Mensah," a voice said, smooth, confident. "Richard Owusu, I hear you're planning something dramatic." Kwame's expression didn't change. "I'm planning transparency." A chuckle. "You know how that ends." "Yes," Kwame replied. "With the truth." "Be careful," Richard said. "You'll hurt people you didn't intend to." Esi leaned forward. "You already have." A pause. Richard hadn't expected her voice. "Miss Appiah," he said lightly. "This isn't personal." Esi's lips curved into a humorless smile. "It never is when you're the one in control." Richard sighed. "Walk away. Take care of the woman. Let the company handle its own." Kwame's voice cut in firm. "The company is not above the people it harms." Silence crackled through the speaker. "Then you've chosen," Richard said at last. "Yes," Kwame replied. "I have." The line went dead. Minutes before the board convened, the first blow landed. A news alert flashed across a screen. Rumors swirl around CEO's secret beneficiary, questions of favoritism raised. Esi closed her eyes. Kwame cursed under his breath. "He's moving." Another alert followed, then another. Each headline sharper than the last, each insinuation slicing a little deeper. Esi felt the weight of it press into her chest. "This is what he meant," she said. "He's trying to make me look like a liability." Kwame looked at her. "You are not." "That won't matter," Esi replied. "Perception moves faster than facts." Kwame nodded. "Which is why we won't chase perception. We'll anchor to evidence." And Mame Esi asked quietly. Kwame met her eyes. I've arranged a transfer. Esi stiffened. Without telling me, to a private ward, Kwame said quickly. With independent oversight, no delays, no interference. Esi's shoulders sagged with relief and guilt. I didn't want special treatment. This isn't special, Kwame said. It's protection from sabotage. Esi nodded. She hated that the distinction mattered. The board meeting began. Kwame joined via secure link the screen, filling with faces, some wary, some irritated, some carefully neutral. Esi stood just outside the frame, visible enough to be present, distant enough to be dismissed. Kwame spoke first. Calm, precise. He laid out the facts: unauthorized use of corporate stamps, shadow programs operating without oversight, interference with hospital processes, reputational manipulation. He presented timelines, log signatures. Then he did something no one expected. He named names. Richard Owusu's face tightened on the screen. This is outrageous, he snapped. You're deflecting blame. Kwame didn't raise his voice. I'm accepting responsibility and assigning accountability. Murmurs rippled across the board. Esi's phone buzzed again. Last chance. Step back. She ignored it. Kwame continued. Effective immediately, I'm suspending the social impact division pending a full external audit. I'm stepping aside from oversight during the investigation. A stunned silence. Richard laughed, incredulous. You're burning the house to kill a rat. Kwame's eyes were steady. No, I'm opening the windows. Esi felt tears sting her eyes, not from victory, but from the cost she could see in Kwame's posture, the weight settling into his shoulders. Power was being set down, piece by piece. As the meeting adjourned in chaos, the hospital pager beeped. Esi's heart leapt into her throat. She ran. Mame Akosua's ward buzzed with activity. A doctor she didn't recognize met her at the door. She spiked a fever, he said. We're stabilizing her. Esi pushed past, grasping Mame's hand. The old woman's eyes fluttered open, searching. I'm here, Esi whispered, tears finally spilling. I'm here. Mame Akosua squeezed weakly. You stood up, she murmured. I felt it. Esi laughed through her tears. You always know. Kwame arrived moments later, breathless. He stood back, giving Esi space, his face drawn with worry. The fever broke after an hour that felt like a lifetime. When the doctor finally nodded, Esi sank into a chair, shaking. Kwame approached quietly. She'll be okay. Esi looked up at him. You chose. Kwame nodded. So did you. Outside, the headlines shifted. Questions replaced rumors. Documents leaked not maliciously, but cleanly. The truth began its slow, irreversible work. Esi understood then what rock bottom truly was. Not the absence of money, but the moment when silence became more dangerous than speaking. She had reached it, and somehow she was still standing. Morning brought no relief, only clarity. Esi Appiah woke in the chair beside Mame Akosua's bed, with a stiffness that ran from her neck down to her spine. The ward was quieter than it had been in days, as if the hospital itself was holding its breath. Outside the window, Accra's traffic moved in a steady river, indifferent to the private battles unfolding inside concrete walls. Mame Akosua slept, her breathing even at last. The fever had broken, but weakness lingered. Esi watched the gentle rise and fall of her chest and let herself believe just for a moment that they had crossed the worst of it. Her phone buzzed softly. Kwame Mensah, I'm downstairs, when you're ready. Esi hesitated before replying. Give me 10 minutes. She needed those minutes to steady herself. The past 24 hours had stripped away illusions she hadn't known she still carried about neutrality, about systems correcting themselves, about powerful men choosing right without being forced to choose at all. She kissed Mame Akosua's forehead and stepped into the corridor. Kwame stood near the elevator's jacket. back on face composed into something between resolve and exhaustion. He looked like a man who had finally stopped negotiating with himself. Richard moved money overnight, Kwame said, without preamble as they walked. He tried to settle contracts. Close accounts scatter the trail. Did it work? Esi asked. No, Kwame replied. Not enough. They entered a small conference room set up for the audit team. 2 external investigators, 1 woman, 1 man, sat with laptops open, expressions neutral and sharp. On the screen behind them glowed a web of transactions, approvals, and timestamps. Kwame gestured to the chair beside him. Stay, he said to Esi. You need to hear this, the woman investigator began. We traced the unauthorized stamp usage to a limited access group. Financial compliance. Richard Owusu authorized the replication under the pretext of emergency outreach. Esi felt her stomach drop. Emergency, the investigator nodded. He framed it as rapid response aid bypassing oversight to move quickly. Kwame's jaw tightened. And Mame Akosua. She was flagged years ago, the investigator continued. Her profile fit the criteria. Elderly, undocumented, community visible. The program tracked outcomes, not people. Esi's hands curled. Outcomes like what media metrics, the investigator said calmly. Reputation insulation. The ability to point to impact when the company faced scrutiny. Kwame closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, the anger there was controlled and deeper for it. This wasn't charity, he said. It was insurance. Yes, the investigator replied. And when Esi Appiah entered the picture, the risk profile changed. A caregiver with a public confrontation, a hospital dispute, and she paused, a CEO who noticed. Esi swallowed. So he escalated. He attempted to, the investigator said, by shaping the narrative before it shaped him. Kwame leaned forward. Which is why the market incident happened. Correct, the investigator said. Public shaming discourages credibility. It isolates. It teaches silence. Esi felt the truth settle into her bones. Every step had been calculated. Every delay. Every whisper. Kwame exhaled. What's the exposure? Significant, the investigator replied. But containable if you're willing to take the hit. Kwame didn't hesitate. Do it! Esi turned to him. What does that mean? It means, Kwame said quietly, I stop protecting the company from the truth and start protecting the truth from the company. The press conference was scheduled for noon. Too soon, Esi thought. But delay would only give Richard more time. They stood behind a partition, while technicians adjusted microphones. The room hummed with anticipation. Journalists murmuring, cameras blinking awake. Esi felt small and impossibly visible. You don't have to stand with me, Kwame said softly. Esi met his eyes. Yes, I do. He nodded once, accepting it. When they stepped out, the room erupted into flashes and questions. Kwame raised a hand, the practiced gesture of a man used to being heard. I will speak, first, he said. Then I'll answer questions. He didn't read from notes. He spoke plainly. An internal investigation has confirmed that senior leadership within Mensa Global Holdings misused corporate authority, Kwame said. This included unauthorized documentation interference with public services and retaliatory actions against a private citizen. Murmurs surged. I failed to see it sooner, he continued, and for that I take responsibility. A hand shot up. Are you referring to allegations involving a young woman and a hospital patient? Yes, Kwame replied. I am. Esi's heart pounded. I am suspending the Social Impact Division. Effective immediately, Kwame said. I have requested law enforcement oversight, and I am stepping aside from executive authority pending the audit's conclusion. Gasps, whispers, phones buzzing. Esi felt the room tilt. Stepping aside wasn't symbolic, it was seismic. Another reporter shouted, Is this about protecting your image? Kwame shook his head. It's about repairing harm. He turned then slightly to Esi. This woman, he said, voice steady, was wronged by systems designed to move faster than conscience. She owes us nothing. We owe her everything we can do to make this right. Esi stepped forward, hands shaking but voice clear. I didn't come here for money, she said. I came because silence almost killed someone I love. The room went still. My mommy was denied care. Esi continued. Not because she wasn't sick, but because it was convenient to wait. That's what power does when it forgets people. Questions exploded. Kwame answered what he could. When he couldn't, he said so. No spin, no deflection. By the time it ended, the narrative had shifted. Not to praise, but to accountability. Richard Owusu was arrested that evening. Esi watched the footage on a muted screen in the hospital waiting area. He walked with his head-high jaw set, still wearing the confidence of a man who believed consequences were for others. Kwame stood beside her. He'll fight, he said. I know, Esi replied, but he can't pretend anymore. Kwame nodded. Neither can I. They returned to Maame Akoswa's room together. The old woman's eyes opened when she sensed them. You made noise, she said faintly. Esi smiled. Enough. Maame Akoswa's gaze shifted to Kwame. Did it cost you? Kwame met her eyes. Yes. Maame Akoswa nodded once. Then it was real. Esi felt tears gather, not of relief alone, but of recognition. For the first time, the sacrifice matched the apology. Later that night, Kwame sat alone in his office, now stripped of authority and strangely lighter for it. He replayed the past years. The shortcuts justified the metrics praised. He understood something he hadn't before. Arrogance wasn't cruelty. It was distance. The belief that outcomes mattered more than lives, and Esi had closed that distance without asking permission. He typed a message, then erased it. Typed again. Thank you for not letting me look away. He sent it. Esi received it in the quiet of the ward, watching Maame Akoswa's steady breathing. She read the message once, then set the phone down without replying. Gratitude, she knew, was not something to rush. It needed time to become true. The aftermath unfolded with a strange quiet. Hospitals do not celebrate justice. They absorb it and move on. Forms were signed. New oversight notices appeared on bulletin boards. A different administrator came to Maame Akoswa's room to explain protocols in careful, respectful language. No one apologized out loud, but the change itself was an admission. Esi watched closely. She had learned that reform sounded convincing on paper and fragile in practice. In the days that followed, external auditors rotated through the building. They spoke with nurses, pharmacists, porters. They asked about delays and directives about who called and when. Esi answered what she could, refusing to embellish. The truth didn't need decoration. Kwame kept his distance by design. He visited the hospital once a day, always asking permission before entering the room. He listened more than he spoke. When journalists requested follow-up interviews, he declined. The facts are public, he said. The healing is private. Esi noticed the difference. Power stripped of urgency looked almost ordinary. On the fourth day, Maame Akoswa asked to sit by the window. Esi helped her into the chair, tucking the blanket around her thin shoulders. Outside, a jacaranda tree shed purple petals onto the pavement like small offerings. You stood where you were told not to stand, Maame Akoswa said quietly. Esi smiled. I stood where you taught me to stand. Maame Akoswa's eyes softened. And the man he stood to, Esi replied, when it mattered. That is rare, Maame said. And costly. Esi nodded. She had seen the cost etched into Kwame's posture, the way his shoulders no longer carried the easy confidence of untouchable authority. He had chosen visibility over comfort, and visibility demanded payment. That afternoon, the investigators returned with preliminary findings. They spoke plainly. There will be charges, the woman investigator said, and restitution. Restitution to whom Esi asked. To the affected institutions, the investigator replied, and to individuals harmed by procedural abuse. Esi glanced at Mame Akosua. We don't want hush money. The investigator met her gaze. Nor are we offering it. Compensation will be structured transparent and independent of the company's influence. Esi exhaled. Good. When they left, Kwame lingered at the doorway. I won't be making decisions, he said. Not for a while. Esi studied him, and after Kwame said, choosing his words carefully, I'll rebuild what should never have been built this way. Esi nodded. Rebuild quietly. Kwame managed a small smile. I'm learning. Evenings settled over the city's softening edges. Esi sat with Mame Akosua as the lights dimmed. For the first time in weeks, she felt something like steadiness, not safety, not certainty, but ground beneath her feet. Her phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number this time, without menace. Thank you for speaking. She didn't reply. Thanks were better carried forward than sent back. Before leaving, Kwame paused at the threshold. If there's anything, Esi raised a hand gently. There is. He waited. Make sure the system doesn't learn to hide better, she said. Make sure it learns to listen. Kwame inclined his head. I will. As he left, Esi returned to Mame Akosua's side. The old woman slept peaceful at last. Esi watched the city lights blink on beyond the glass, each one a small witness. The truth had been spoken. The cost had been paid. And while nothing was magically fixed, something essential had shifted inside the building, inside the company, and inside a man who had learned too late, but not too late enough, that arrogance dissolves when faced with a life that refuses to be reduced to a line item. Esi closed her eyes, letting the quiet settle. Tomorrow would bring new questions. But tonight, the air felt honest. The reckoning did not arrive all at once. It came in fragments, documents leaked in careful batches, testimonies scheduled and rescheduled, headlines corrected, and then corrected again. Truth, Esi Appiah learned, rarely moved in a straight line. It advanced by pressure and patience, by the refusal to let silence settle back into place. 2 weeks after the press conference, the boardroom filled again. This time, Kwame Mensah did not sit at the head of the table. He took a chair along the side posture, formal hands folded, eyes attentive. The seat he had once occupied remained empty, a deliberate absence that drew attention to itself. Across from him sat the external auditors, legal counsel, and a representative from the ministry, faces composed, pens ready. Esi stood near the back, invited but not showcased. She wore a simple dress, the kind that didn't ask for permission to be taken seriously. The room smelled faintly of polish and tension. Richard Owusu entered last. He looked thinner. Not defeated, controlled. His suit was impeccable, his expression calm. He nodded to no one, took his seat, and folded his hands as if this were merely another meeting he intended to dominate. The chair of the audit committee cleared her throat. We will begin. Evidence unfurled like a map. Logs projected onto the screen. Email threads time-stamped and cross-referenced. Authorization pathways highlighted in red. A quiet, methodical dismantling of denials. Richard leaned back, arms crossed, waiting for a gap. When it came, he seized it. This presentation conflates speed with malice, he said smoothly. Emergency outreach requires agility. Procedures lag behind reality. The auditor did not look up. We anticipated that defense. She clicked and a new slide appeared, hospital records showing delays aligned with internal communications. Market security reports. Media outreach calendars drafted before incidents occurred. Esi felt her breath hitch as she recognized details from her own life, rendered into neutral language. She had never imagined pain could look so tidy. Richard's jaw tightened. This is circumstantial, he said. You're building intent from coincidence. A murmur rippled. Kwame spoke then, not loudly, not urgently. Intent appears when patterns repeat. All eyes turned to him. I trusted you with compliance, Kwame continued, because you spoke the language of caution. But caution without conscience is cruelty dressed for approval. Richard smiled thinly. You're speaking as if you weren't the beneficiary. Kwame nodded. I was, and that's why I stepped aside. The room stilled. The words hung heavy with implication. The auditor addressed Richard. You authorized the replication of the corporate stamp without oversight. You coordinated with third parties to shape public perception. And you interfered with hospital procurement by leveraging reputational pressure. Richard exhaled slowly. I protected the company. No, Esi said, stepping forward before she could stop herself. You protected outcomes. The chair glanced at Esi. Proceed. Esi's voice was steady, though her hands trembled. You protected charts and headlines, not people, not my mommy, not the nurse who feared losing her job if she spoke. You made harm efficient. Richard's gaze flicked to her sharp. Emotion doesn't change facts. Esi met his eyes. Neither does arrogance. The auditor raised a hand, restoring order. We have sufficient cause to recommend prosecution. A beat. Richard stood. Then I will challenge it. You will have the opportunity, the chair replied. Under the law. Security approached, not to restrain, but to escort. Richard straightened his jacket, offering a final smile that failed to convince even himself. As he left, Esi felt something loosen in her chest. Not triumph. Relief, the kind that comes when a door finally closes. Outside reporters clustered like weather. Kwame declined interviews again. The process is ongoing, he said. Let it work. Esi slipped away, returning to the hospital where Mame Akosua waited. The old woman sat up more, now color returning slowly to her cheeks. When Esi entered, she smiled. You look lighter, Mame said. The room did, Esi replied, sitting beside her. Not me. Mame chuckled softly. Weight doesn't vanish. It shifts. They sat in companionable quiet until a knock came. Nana Serwa Mensa stepped in. She wore a muted dress hair pulled back, her elegance softened by restraint. The room felt smaller for her presence. I asked to speak, Nana Serwa said. Briefly. Esi studied her. Say what you came to say. Nana Serwa nodded. I misjudged you. Esi waited. I thought proximity to power would break you. Nana Serwa continued. Or bend you. Instead, it exposed what I didn't want examined. Esi folded her hands. And I resigned, Nana Serwa said simply. From communications. Effective today. Esi felt surprise ripple through her, then caution. Why tell me? Because narratives have authors, Nana Serwa replied. And I no longer wish to write the kind that erase people. Mame Akosua watched quietly, eyes wise. Nana Serwa met Esi's gaze. I won't ask forgiveness, only space. Esi nodded once, then take it. Nana Serwa inclined her head and left. That evening, Kwame visited alone. He stood by the window, hands clasped, posture measured. The board voted, he said. They accepted the auditor's recommendations. Esi looked at him. And you, I won't return as CEO, Kwame replied. Not immediately. Perhaps not at all. Esi searched his face. Do you regret it, Kwame considered. I regret the years I needed someone else's suffering to understand my own distance. Esi nodded. Understanding doesn't erase harm. No, Kwame said, but it can prevent its repetition. He turned to Mame Akosua. I'm sorry, he said quietly, for what you endured. Mame Akosua studied him, then smiled faintly. Make it smaller, she said. Kwame blinked. Smaller, your power, Mame replied, so it fits in a human hand. Kwame bowed his head. I will try. As he left, Esi walked him to the door. I won't disappear, she said, but I won't perform either. Kwame nodded. I wouldn't ask you to. They parted without ceremony. Days passed. The hospital cleared Mame Akosua for discharge to a monitored recovery program, independent, community-based, transparent. Esi reviewed every paper, asked every question. This time, no one rushed her. On the morning they left, the jacaranda petals had thickened, painting the pavement purple. Esi paused at the threshold, taking one last look at the ward. The place had been cruel and kind in equal measure. It had shown her how systems hurt and how they can be made to listen when pressed. Outside, a modest vehicle waited. No tinted windows, no escort. As they pulled away, Esi felt the city open around them. Not welcoming, not hostile. Real. Her phone buzzed once more. Kwame Mensah, I'm starting a foundation, independent governance, community-led oversight. I would value your input. Esi read it twice, then typed a reply. Listen first, then ask. She sent it and set the phone down. The road curved ahead, uncertain and unglamorous. Esi held Mame Akosua's hand and breathed in the city's noise. Justice, she knew now, wasn't a moment. It was a posture, and for the first time, the posture felt possible. The consequences arrived wearing suits. They came through official letters stamped with government seals, through summons delivered by messengers who spoke carefully, through calendar invitations marked mandatory attendance. Justice Esi Appiah learned did not thunder, it documented. Kwame Mensah received the final notice on a gray morning when Accra's sky hung low and undecided. He read it once, then again, then folded it with deliberate calm. The extraordinary board session would be public, televised, observed by regulators, shareholders, and the press. This would not be an internal reckoning. It would be a public one. He called Esi. They've scheduled the hearing, he said. Today. Esi closed her eyes briefly. She had expected this moment, but expectation did not dull its weight. Where headquarters? Kwame replied. The main hall. Esi glanced at Mame Akosua, now resting at the Community Recovery Center, stronger, but still fragile. She's safe, yes, Kwame said. Independent oversight, I checked myself. Then I'll come, Esi replied. But I won't be quiet. Kwame didn't ask her to be. Mensah Global Holdings looked different when viewed from the outside. The glass facade reflected a city that had begun to ask harder questions. Protesters gathered at a respectful distance, no shouting, no signs demanding blood. Just handwritten placards. Accountability, transparency, people before, profits. Inside, the hall filled quickly. Board members sat in rigid lines. Government observers took notes. Cameras adjusted angles. Every seat carried the weight of anticipation. Kwame entered without escort. He wore a simple dark suit, no tie, no insignia. When he took his place at the front, a murmur rippled through the room. This was the man who had once commanded silence by lifting a hand. Now he waited to be questioned. Esi took a seat near the aisle, visible but not elevated. She felt eyes on her, but she did not shrink. If this moment demanded presence, she would give it on her own terms. The chairperson opened the session. We are here to determine responsibility, she said, and consequence. The presentation was brief. The evidence already known, the violations outlined, the damage acknowledged. Then the chairperson turned to Kwame. Mr. Mensah, she said, you are not charged with initiating these actions, but you are charged with allowing the system that enabled them. Kwame stood. He did not argue. I accept that charge, he said. A murmur surged louder this time. Kwame continued. Leadership does not end at intention. It ends at impact, and my impact included harm. Esi felt her chest tighten. Words like these were rare in rooms like this. A board member cleared his throat. You could mitigate this, he said carefully. A settlement, a quiet restructuring. Kwame shook his head. Quiet is what allowed this to grow. The chairperson raised a hand. Proceed. Kwame took a breath. Effective immediately. I am resigning from all executive roles. I will forfeit compensation bonuses and voting privileges pending the outcome of restitution. The room fell silent. Esi's breath caught. This was more than stepping aside. This was dismantling his own authority. Gasps rippled across the hall. A camera zoomed in. Pens paused mid-scratch. "You don't have to do this," another board member said. The company will survive," Kwame replied. People did not. He turned slightly, his gaze finding Esi. "And I will not be remembered as a man who protected structures over lives." The chairperson nodded slowly. "Your resignation is noted," but Kwame wasn't finished. "I am also submitting evidence to the prosecutor," he said, "including my own failures of oversight. I will testify if called." A shock wave moved through the room. This was the moment, the one no one had predicted. Not apology, sacrifice. Esi felt tears sting her eyes, not from sympathy but from recognition. This was the cost Richard Owusu had sworn Kwame would never pay. Kwame had paid it anyway. When the floor opened for testimony, Esi stood. She had not been scheduled. But the chairperson nodded. "State your name," the clerk said. "Esi Appiah," she replied. Her voice did not shake. "Caregiver to Mame Akosua." She spoke plainly of the hospital delays, the market accusation. The file she never consented to become. She did not dramatize. She did not soften. "I am not here to destroy a company," Esi said. "I am here to insist that companies remember they exist because people exist." Silence followed, not uncomfortable, but heavy with truth. The chairperson thanked her. Then the vote was taken. Sanctions approved. Oversight mandated. Restitution ordered. Criminal proceedings affirmed. The gavel fell. It was done. Outside the city breathed. Reporters surged, voices overlapping. Kwame did not stop. He walked straight past them, head-high shoulders, unburdened in a way power had never allowed. Esi followed, heart pounding. On the steps, Kwame finally turned to her. "This is where it ends," he said. Esi shook her head. "This is where it changes." Kwame smiled faintly. "You were right about what she asked. Help," he replied. "That it must come without hooks." Esi nodded. "And justice must come with cost." Kwame extended his hand, not as a savior, not as a benefactor, but as a man acknowledging another. Esi took it. Cameras flashed. The image would travel. She didn't care. What mattered was this: the arrogant CEO had chosen to fall forward into accountability. And that choice had shocked everyone, including himself. As Esi turned away, her phone buzzed with a message from the recovery center. "Mame Akosua is asking for you." Esi smiled, relief washing through her. She left the steps behind, moving toward the only place that mattered. Behind her, the building stood unchanged, but inside it something essential had been broken open. And for the first time, the break felt like the beginning of healing. Healing did not arrive with applause. It arrived quietly in ordinary moments that asked for patience instead of praise. Esi Appiah learned this in the weeks that followed the hearing. The city moved on, as cities always did. Headlines thinned. Commentators found new controversies. Mensa Global Holdings began the long work of restructuring under scrutiny that would last years, not days. Kwame Mensah disappeared from the front pages, not because he hid, but because he no longer commanded attention. Esi visited Mame Akosua every morning at the recovery center, bringing fruit when she could, reading aloud when the old woman's eyes tired. The nurses were attentive in a way that felt different now, less fearful, more accountable. Forms were explained, questions were welcomed. Time once weaponized had softened into something closer to care. One afternoon, as sunlight pooled on the floor, Mame Akosua reached for Esi's hand. "You are lighter," she said. Esi smiled. "So are you." Mame Akosua chuckled softly, then grew thoughtful. "What will you do now?" Esi had asked herself that question 100 times. She had lived so long in reaction, responding to hunger, to threat, to humiliation. That choice felt unfamiliar. "I want to study," Esi said. "Social work, or public health, something that keeps systems honest." Mame Akosua nodded, satisfied. "Then learn how they bend and how they can be straightened." That evening, Esi found a message waiting. "Kwame Mensa, I won't ask you to join anything, but if you're willing, I'd like to listen to you and to others like you." Quietly, Esi considered it. Then she replied, "Listening isn't a meeting, it's a practice. Start there." He responded with a single word. "Agreed." Weeks passed. Kwame kept his distance, honoring the boundary Esi had set. When they did meet, it was never in glass rooms or on stages. It was at community centers, in modest offices, sometimes just on benches beneath trees. He asked questions and waited for answers. He took notes. He learned when to stop speaking. The foundation he began took shape slowly. Independent governance, community-led oversight, transparent funding, no banners, no gala dinners. Progress measured, not by press releases, but by whether clinics stocked medication on time, whether caregivers were paid promptly, whether complaints were answered without fear. Esi participated on her terms. She reviewed proposals. She challenged assumptions. When something felt performative, she said so. "You're still thinking in outcomes," she told Kwame once. "Think in people." He nodded. "I'm trying." One afternoon, after a long meeting, they walked together down a quiet street. The city hummed around them, indifferent and alive. "You know," Kwame said, "I built my life believing distance was safety." Esi glanced at him. "Distance is comfort. Safety comes from accountability." Kwame smiled faintly. "I'm learning the difference." He stopped, turning to face her. "I don't expect forgiveness." Esi considered him, really considered him, and found no anger waiting there, only caution, earned and necessary. "Forgiveness isn't a gift," she said. "It's a process, and it doesn't start with words." Kwame nodded. "Then I'll keep working." As months turned, Mame Akosua grew stronger. She began helping at the center, sorting supplies, telling stories to patients who needed distraction more than medicine. Her laughter returned, gentle and contagious. On the day she was cleared to return home, Esi packed their things carefully. The room had become familiar, almost dear. She paused at the door, breathing in the ordinary smell of disinfectant and sun. Outside, the jacaranda petals had fallen, leaving the branches bare but ready. A modest car waited. No escort, no tinted windows. At home, neighbors watched with curiosity, not envy, not suspicion, just recognition. Esi greeted them as she always had, without explanation. The room behind the kiosks had been repaired by volunteers who asked permission and listened to instructions. It was still small, still imperfect, but it was theirs. That night, Esi lay awake, listening to the city breathe. She thought of the girl who had knelt on marble floors clutching papers that weighed more than coins. She thought of the man who had signed documents without looking and then learned to look. Change, she realized, was not the erasure of harm. It was the refusal to repeat it. Weeks later, Kwame visited once more alone, unannounced, respectful. "I wanted to tell you," he said, standing by the doorway. "The first clinic under the new model reported 0 delays this month." Esi smiled. "Good, and the board accepted the community oversight charter." "Better," she said. He hesitated. "I'm happier, less certain, but happier." Esi nodded. Certainty is overrated. They stood in comfortable silence. Before leaving, Kwame placed an envelope on the table. Not thick, not heavy. "What's that?" Esi asked. "An acceptance letter," he said. "Scholarship, independent, you earned it." Esi opened it slowly. Her breath caught. "Thank you," she said, not reflexively, not cheaply. "Truly," Kwame smiled, then stepped back. "I'll go." As he walked away, Esi felt something settle, an understanding, not a promise. They were connected by accountability, not obligation, by respect, not rescue. Later, Esi sat beside Mame Akosua, reading aloud from the letter. The old woman listened, eyes shining. "You changed him," Mame Akosua said softly. Esi shook her head. "He changed himself." Mame Akosua smiled. "You gave him a mirror." Outside, the city lights blinked on one by one, imperfect and persistent. Esi closed the book and leaned back, letting the quiet hold her. The arrogant CEO had been transformed, not by charity, not by romance, but by the courage of a poor orphan girl who refused to be managed into silence. And what he did next, stepping away, giving up power, choosing accountability, had shocked her. Not because it was grand, but because it was real. Sometimes life does not change because someone arrives with money, power, or perfect intentions. Sometimes life changes because an ordinary person refuses to accept being erased. Esi Appiah did not begin this journey hoping to transform a powerful man or challenge a system built long before she was born. She only wanted one simple thing: dignity. The dignity for an elderly woman to receive care without humiliation. The dignity to work without being labeled a thief. The dignity to exist without being managed, silenced, or used as a statistic. And that is where the deepest lesson lives. In the real world, injustice rarely looks dramatic. It hides in procedures, delays, polite smiles, and rules that somehow always bend against the poor. It survives because people are taught that speaking up is dangerous, that silence is safer, and that power is too heavy to confront. But Esi showed something different. She showed that courage does not require status. It requires clarity. She did not shout. She did not beg. She did not seek revenge. She simply told the truth, again and again, even when the cost was frightening. And in doing so, she held up a mirror that no amount of authority could ignore. Kwame Mensah's transformation was not the result of pity or romance. It was the result of accountability. True change did not happen when he offered money, protection, or solutions. It happened when he chose to lose something meaningful in order to do what was right. Power became human the moment it accepted consequences. This is the kind of healing that lasts. Not the kind that fixes everything overnight, but the kind that reshapes how decisions are made, how people are treated, and how silence is broken. Healing that reminds us that systems do not change because they are criticized, but because people inside them decide to listen. If this story touched you, take a moment to reflect. Have you ever been silent when speaking felt risky? Have you ever seen injustice dressed as procedure, or kindness offered with hidden conditions? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters more than you think. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, stories about dignity, accountability, and quiet courage, subscribe to the channel and stay with us. Together, we keep these stories alive.